I wanted to multitask using up some of my ingredients before I left France and the things I had in my French kitchen, as well as making something that my chocolate and coffee loving friend here would enjoy. So I figured what would be better than espresso brownie macarons. So first, what I need to do so I can have time to bake and cool it is make a brownie. And this is just a really simple brownie. I'm mixing all of my dry ingredients together. You could absolutely do this with a stand mixer or a hand mixer. It's not important, but you absolutely can do it by hand. It is so easy. So that is like cocoa powder and the flour and all of that. I'm also adding my sugar in there. If you have a sifter or something like that, I would absolutely recommend sifting your cocoa powder. I don't have one, so I did not do that. In a separate bowl, I have some olive oil and espresso. You could use a bit of coffee. You could also use espresso or coffee powder. Whatever you have is fine. You can also use a more neutral oil. Olive oil just is going to give it a little bit of a fruitier taste. Then I'm adding in some eggs and vanilla and giving that a really good whisk. Make sure to emulsify all those ingredients together before dumping it over my dry ingredients and mixing that until it is completely combined. There might be a minute or two where it looks like it's not going to combine, like there might be too many dry ingredients, but I promise you it's okay. It's going to work out just fine. So give that a good mix, and then I dumped in a bunch of mini chocolate chips at the end. You can use chopped chocolate. You can also add some nuts in there, whatever floats your boat. After that is mixed together, I'm just pouring it into my prepared pan and using an offset spatula just to make sure that everything is really smooth, especially because I'm going to be cutting this up and putting it into my macarons. I don't want it to be really uneven or bake unevenly. So I'll get that in the oven to bake, and then I'll let it cool while I proceed to making my macaron shells. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is just make a regular old macaron shell. I'm going to use brown food coloring. The one I'm using today is the True Brown by the Sugar Art. But to make these a little bit special and make them look a little bit more brownie-esque, I am going to be using a little bit of cocoa powder to dust over the shell. So it will be a darker brown shell and then the extra brown from the cocoa powder. And I think it just makes it look and feel a little bit more special and unique, even if it is a really simple and easy addition. I am just using the French method here for my meringue, so I'm starting off with room temperature egg whites, and I will stream in my sugar here as soon as it looks white and frothy. And after I get all of the sugar incorporated, I will add in my food coloring and continue whipping until I get really stiff peaks. after I get to a really stiff peak with my meringue, I'm going to start adding in my dry ingredients, the almond flour and powdered sugar. I like to mix those in about 3 additions here, though depending on the size of the batch and your style of baking and macaron making, if you want to do fewer or more, that is obviously fine. Just make sure that you're incorporating everything and going rather quickly and not spending too much time incorporating each batch in, because we still want to do the macaronage after everything is completely together. After everything is all combined, I will just continue mixing and doing that macaronage, scraping my batter against the sides of the bowl and folding it over onto itself to deflate the meringue until when I pull my spatula up, I can see that I've achieved the ribbon stage, which means that the batter flows like a ribbon from my spatula down into the bowl. After I've achieved that ribbon stage, I'm just going to transfer the batter to my piping bag, and I also have that cocoa powder at the ready to dust as soon as I pipe and tap my trays. Now I'm just piping regular old circles here, but because I am adding a little bit of a brownie into this, I just want to remind you that with these macarons, if you really want to have a good bite full of brownie on the inside, I think it's a good idea to go for regular size, if not slightly larger macaron shells, and not attempting this flavor if you're going for tiny or kind of mini macaron, because you do want to have room for the brownie inside. And then because of the brownie addition, I'm going to pipe double rings of coffee buttercream, so I want to make sure that I also have room for that. So after I get my macs piped and I tap the bottom of the tray just to smooth out the tops of those shells, I'm dusting some cocoa powder over the top. I don't want to completely cover it, just a nice little dusting will do the trick. And then I'll leave these just to rest like normal until a skin forms on the top. baking and cooling, these macs can be matched up, and then I am ready to move on. I am going to be cutting up this brownie. If I had small cookie cutters, I absolutely would cut little circles. I don't, so I'm just using a knife to cut small little squares and double checking as I go to make sure that they fit into my macaron shell, leaving enough room for the buttercream, and also make sure to save all the scraggly bits for yourself to eat later. After that is ready to go, the last thing I need to do is whip up that buttercream. I'm just making a Swiss meringue buttercream here, so putting my sugar and egg whites in a double boiler, cooking that until it is hot and all of the sugar has dissolved. Then I will whip this into a meringue and slowly add in my butter. I am also going to pour in a shot of espresso, though you could absolutely add in coffee flavor or like instant coffee or instant espresso, whatever works for you, is totally fine here. If you are not so much a coffee person, but you are a chocolate person, you could add in a bit of cocoa powder, hot cocoa mix, or even a little bit of melted dark chocolate, and it would be an amazing addition to this macaron. When everything is ready to go, the first thing I did was put the little squares of brownie on one side of my paired up macaron shells, and after I get all of those ready and prepared, I will go in with my buttercream. I think no matter what you're doing in your kitchen, especially with any baked goods or macarons, doing things like an assembly line is super important. Don't do one at a time. So for this an example, place all of your brownie pieces down first and then go through with the buttercream. Don't do that one macaron by one macaron. It will take much longer. Because I wanted to add a bunch of brownie and I want it to be really thick and delectable, I am going to pipe enough buttercream, so it's about 2 rings up, to make sure I cover the entire thing. Otherwise, when I sandwich the top shell of the macaron, it will only be touching the brownie and it won't have anything to cling onto. So if you don't want this much buttercream, this is a little bit more of that Korean style like tunkarong, or in English they might say fat karon. If you don't like this style, you can just have a much smaller, thinner brownie. It won't be as delicious, but it will be less buttercream. I really like to use a piping tip when piping these macarons because you see the buttercream so clearly. Otherwise, I often don't use a piping tip, so that is up to you whether you want to or not. After sandwiching, these macarons will mature just like normal in your refrigerator or freezer, so just make sure to give them a good 24 plus hours before biting into them. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. So if you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. I'll see you here again next time. Until then, have a wonderful day. Bye!